Wilson, I'm going to put you on the hot seat. Is globalization dead? But before we do that, I think it's important to recognize that you work for a European company, a German company, yes. And you just broke ground on a new facility here in yes. Guangzhou, in Huangpu district. Yes. It's your 6th in China, and yes. this could be your largest. So I think in some sense, the answer is maybe predetermined by that background.
Yeah, so you mean okay. We just think because to prove Zeiss really got globalization, which is the localization is quite important. For me, I think my understanding of globalization is if you really got a localization, the country where you go, then yeah. you can realize real globalization. So to prove that, allow me to answer your question in English to say I'm really local people. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Okay. 那么作为这个刚
Well, yeah, there are some issues with globalization now. Some part of it is coming to a standstill. And according to my view, one of the basic foundations for globalization is that the exporter needs to have a capability that the importer needs. So that's a basic paradigm of globalization and the basic driving force behind globalization. For a company, we're not only selling products in another country, we are calling it a global distribution. Moreover, if you are truly into another country, you should not only sell products, but also establish your manufacturing and other facilities locally, nurturing local talents, paying attention to local consumers and trends, innovate to meet and satisfy local demands, and stay ahead of the curve locally as well. So you will always be desired. So for Carl Zeiss, as a Germany-originated company focused on optics and optical electronics as a global leader, we are always focused on pursuing our customer satisfaction.
Actually, we are helping over 35 Nobel laureates to do their research to help them succeed. So Zeiss is a successful company helping other people to succeed.
I want this first Ben, we've got two Bens here, but Ben Harburg, I would love to ask you the same question because in many ways your perspective is you're dealing with, you've got $1.5 billion under management, $1 billion of it invested. You've had some of the hottest hands here in terms of Mobike and Meituan and Uber early on, so now you have a piece of Didi. Many of these companies are actually for domestic audiences, but you've got some investment overseas. So you're actually seeing it both on an internal audience for your investments, but also on the global scale.
Globalization is not dead at all. It's alive and well, but it's a different brand of globalization than characterized the last few centuries. Mm-hmm. And our belief is that will largely be a Chinese led and influenced brand of globalization, particularly in the technology space. Every day what we're witnessing is other countries beginning to replicate Chinese business models, particularly in spaces like consumer internet, financial services, fintech, but then expanding into a broader array of services. New emerging markets in Southeast Asia, the Middle East, West Africa, and now even South America are starting to replicate the Chinese platform companies, those like we discussed, Meituan, Tencent, Alibaba. And that form of new globalization was kind of shaping the dynamic and our investment strategy going forward.
And so this is new, really, I mean, in terms of the Chinese setting the sort of new platforms and the new business models and then being copied around the world. And particularly what's fascinating is this huge adoption of e-commerce by Chinese consumers, 11 times the dollar volume than it is in the United States in terms of e-commerce.
Right. It's the reason why a lot of these emerging markets are able to adopt Chinese business models much more rapidly than those coming out of the West is because they are at a similar stage in their evolutions from a technology adoption perspective as China. So many of them leapfrogged the PC generation. They adopted mobile first, and so that means mobile first for ride hailing, for e-commerce, for mobile payments. A lot of the archaic consumption practices that we have to unlearn in the West in order to start using these types of strategies, they don't have to be done in these new emerging markets. And so as a result, they're a perfect match for the business models emerging from China.
So we've got the production side of this, the investment and business model side of this, and let's go to cultural.
The low end.
Yeah, and a little of both. But I mean, because obviously so the Meg just broke a big record. You became the most successful Sino-US movie
It's actually
production.
Sino-foreign.
China,
co-production.
okay. So really, it's any kind of foreign in history, beating Kung Fu Panda 3. So you are a hero to has anyone seen the Meg? If you've got an 8-year-old or 10-year-old at home, you're probably the big celebrity up here.
I don't think so. I'm not a star. I'm just people behind the scene, Yeah.
But talk a little bit about the idea of this export of a new model as well. This was, I saw the movie and it felt to me a lot like a Hollywood movie. What was uniquely Chinese about the movie?
Well, the original goal for this movie is to make an old movie, a simple movie, because considering the budget, the production budget is $130 million US. It's a big budget movie, even for Hollywood standards. So and also our plan is to make a franchise. So because of all these considerations, we have to make a real universal movies that can target all the mainstream audience. And the mainstream audience nowadays is people from the audience from 15 to like 25. So everybody here are not our target audience. So you don't have to feel sorry that, when I asked you, have you seen the movie? You said no. Okay, you're not a target audience, right? So the story is very simple, but especially we put a lot of money on the special effect. And also the whole tempo, the twist in the back. And
don't give that away.
Oh, the horror part.
Yeah.
We don't want to make it too, horror, because it's supposed to be an entertainment movie. Yeah, we need to have like teenagers to enter the theater to see the movie.
It was actually very funny for a horror movie. There were lots of little moments that came out. But this is one of those examples of actually a bright light in partnership between U.S. and Chinese entities. It's actually one of the few areas where you could point to and say, what trade friction? This has been. Do you see more of that, particularly on the cultural side?
On the cultural side, we're talking about globalization. Actually, movie business, if we see movie as a business, is actually one of the biggest benefactors of the whole globalization. Because for China, for the audience here, we have never had this kind of chance to see so many foreign movies, not just Hollywood commercial movies, and also some movies made in small European countries, Mexican movies. It's easier for us to watch it online, right? And also on the other side, China movies, there's some companies are distributing Chinese movies overseas. I've been to Vancouver theaters, Los Angeles theaters. It's so easy for you to watch Chinese movies day and date at the same time. So all these are the benefits from globalization, but there's a kind of backlash. The backlash is not from the market or the audience, it's from the inside of the creative community. All the writers in Hollywood are complaining that we don't want to write for movies anymore because your universal movies, global movies, are too simple. There are no dialogues anymore, just special effects, actions, anything. So we want to do TV series because local American TV shows are the real quality stories. We want to do that. We don't want to do movies anymore.
Let me tell you, you wouldn't be the first business that pissed off writers. So
I know. But on the other side, special effect people are happy. They have a lot of job to do, right? So it's a different you just see from
But
different
it's
sides.
interesting, because I'm beginning to think from all of your comments that the whole premise, is globalization dead, is kind of a question that you might be asking if you're in the US now, facing the kind of constant drumbeat of anti-trade, anti-immigrant, anti-outside, Make America Great World. Or if you're in the UK, in Manchester, and you voted for Brexit. But in the rest of the world, I mean, in Germany, and dealing with the expansions that you've got, maybe this is a new opportunity for globalization.
That's true, yes. Yeah. And it's even help us to grow our business, actually. And so now actually in China, we are the number 2 as a Great China in terms of the total contribution, revenue contribution to Zeiss Group. American first, Great China second, German the third.
Right.
Yeah, and also because the barriers from across each countries. Yeah. And we also to put more emphasis for the local business development as well. Yeah. So for me, I don't think it's something like that globalization died or whatever. I just think this is probably like the transition period. And originally, mostly the technology or capital from the developed country to developing country. So especially after 40 years in China, opened up, and now the like technology or industry products, now it's the gap is quite smaller, even eliminated. And the Chinese local company also intend to go global. So that's from the other direction. So probably for the developing country, not really should take time to get used to all of this. Yeah. So let's say I say this is transition period.
And that brings up a question about whether e-commerce and technology have completely changed the rules of the game of trade. One of the things, the World Trade Organization came out with a report just a couple of days ago where they talked about the reduction in costs in global trade because of technology, and particularly because of e-commerce, where it's removing some of the frictions. And so even if there are some new trade tariffs, that overall the growth of trade that will come from the reduction of frictional barriers thanks to technology could actually offset that. So have the rules changed?
Certainly, and I think, again, that's one of the added bonuses of being a Chinese entrepreneur is you have access to the kind of global now low-cost supply chains, many of them centered around this geography where we sit today, and that gives you an added advantage against a US company or a European business when you're harnessing those and rolling out an e-commerce model to a new geography. And just to touch on a point that you two raised, I think we're really at this kind of we're just at the tipping point of where we're starting to see, historically people came to China to sell products. They came to China to get capital from here for outbound investment, particularly emerging markets. We're getting capital from China for developing infrastructure and some of the bigger projects, but not technology. The Chinese capital is now flowing outbound.
That's right.
And it was flowing to the United States until recently to invest in technology companies, movie firms, et cetera. Yeah. That is now pivoted to the rest of the world. And so what we have today are Chinese entrepreneurs going global with Chinese business models, building native companies embedded in Southeast Asia and India, using Chinese capital and Chinese business models, sometimes masking them behind a local face. But this rollout is well underway, and it's not really known.
It's even happening in Hollywood, where the movie business was one of the U.S.'s great exports. That's right. I mean, we were
after defense, I guess.
Exactly right. But I noticed that in this movie, in the Meg, the special effects are pretty extraordinary in terms of you really do feel the fear factor from this.
It's actually made by a Canadian special effect company.
Oh, okay.
So it's a real globalization.
So it is a globalization. But a lot of the technology that's emanating from China and from Asia, broadly speaking, is, some of this stuff is really transformational. We've just heard about the AI. We've heard about blockchain. We had 6 different contestants here, all
Yeah.
with tiny startups boasting about extraordinary technology. Are you seeing that also in the movie making business?
Yeah, of course. It's actually a change in the whole movie making business and also the what we call exhibition,
Right.
screening of
Right.
the movies dramatically.
That's the other part of your business too.
Yeah, I have a TV, movie, a cinema chain
Right.
nationwide. It's called Red Carpet. So yeah, it's really changing the whole landscape of the show business, especially the movie business. And I would like to add one point to what Ben just said. The Chinese company going global in the movie business, and also in spirit of Meg, because Meg, 30% of the dialogue are actually in Chinese, 70% of the dialogue is in English. Yeah, but I want to change to Chinese channel if I can.
Yeah.
Because it's co-production and so.
It's channel 1.
Yeah, let me change to channel 1. Sorry, translators, please translate to English.
Now I speak in Chinese. So I'm from, I try to bring out some of the entertainment element because this is the afternoon people feel sleepy. So want to relax. Just now we talk about, Ben mentioned China capital going global for investment from entertainment and movie industry. I want to add, actually, China and Hollywood in the past 10 years, about the inflow and outflow of capital, there was like a story of hate and love, which is relevant to the globalization topic. 10 years ago, Hollywood came to China, participated in investment, in production of Chinese movies and distribution. But after 10 more years, in this past decade, a lot of Chinese companies have entered Hollywood to acquire companies. Hollywood, investing in Hollywood company, also investing in Hollywood movies, including the Venom. Right now is on show. There's some kind of a Tencent investment in that U.S. movie. This process is a very complex process full of hatred and love. Hollywood believes, you just give me the money. Yeah, just leave me alone for production and distribution. But China is saying, in the past half a century, you are financing globally from the Middle East and Germany through chess credit, and later on you get money from Japan. But now, here comes the money from China. But this time it's different because we also have bring with us market. So you need to listen to me. So a lot of hate is cropping up. Both sides hate each other. You want money? Hollywood asks China, do you have projects? So this project is a key problem.
Canada and CGI. Wilson, one of the things that's happening is because some of the manufacturing in China is becoming expensive, that there is a side effect that, facilities in Southeast Asia and some of the others might be good places to build factories. Is this something that you now find yourself looking at outside of the Guangzhou region or outside of China and looking out to expand your business?
No.
No, you love it here.
Why? Because now, after 40 years of the reformation in China, you can't see China just a low-cost manufacturing size. Okay, number one, in China, actually there's increasing demand for high quality, good products. Think about the middle class in China. It's over 300 million people. It's equal to the total population of the US and Europe. Yeah. So I think the most importantly for one company who go global, so-called global company, should have a global mind. Really need to meet the needs of the local needs. For us, we actually set up not just the manufacturing, R&Ds. Globally, we have 25 R&Ds. Now we call the T&I, Technology and Innovation Department. And also we hire quite a lot of PhDs, or not just from Chinese students, also overseas. Yeah.
You have hundreds of patents, I saw.
And you're right. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Every day we have 2 patents
registered.
Every day.
Every day.
Every year we over 500.
Wow.
Yeah, IP. Yeah.
So I want to come back to some of the challenges still, because I'm not 100% convinced that we're over the backlash from globalization. And, one of the challenges is cultural. Benji, you worked on a movie for Disney called Kundun, which was about the Dalai Lama, and it actually...
I was not involved in that.
You were not involved in it, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But it's
you worked
it's
for
a Disney movie.
But this was one of the challenges for Disney, is
Yeah.
Disney had a difficult time in China for a number of years after that.
Not just Disney. MGM made Red Corner,
Right.
红色角落.
Which explains why they made Mulan.
Columbia made 7 Years in Tibet.
Yeah.
They're all bad movies.
Right.
Yeah.
And so is this a challenge in terms of, the openness, the challenge to accept kind of movies have long been vehicles for criticism?
Yeah, very challenging, very tricky. So that's why I think the formula for the make is right. Because for China, or for American or foreign companies who want to do movies about China, or for China and US companies to do co-productions with Chinese stories, in the past, the producers or directors tend to make movies with what they think organic co-production storylines. Like there are 3 kind of stories that I don't think it's appropriate for co-production at this point of time. Like foreign priest going to China to help local people. Like flying tigers during Second World War helping Chinese army. And Jewish people living in Shanghai during World War II. I have seen so many scripts about these stories, right? They're good stories, very touching,
right.
Very, good people's, story. But because of the whole cultural context, and because of the whole, what shall I put it, ideology, like regulation of the Chinese government, I don't think the time has come to produce these movies.
Right.
So my suggestion is to do movies about China. Do movies, do stories that is targeting young audience, that is forward-looking, that has no past burdens.
Yeah.
Just looking forward. Because in the past, there's no consensus on both sides.
Yeah.
And now, because of the whole cultural exchange, friction, trade friction, everything, the whole communication environment, personally, I think it's getting worse. People on both sides of China, US, cannot communicate efficiently.
Yeah.
So why go, target the past? Go make movies for the future, for the future.
Let me see if we have a
Chinese
question
audience.
out here. Anybody have a question? Just there's a paddle. Let yourself know. So it is a challenge in terms of communication. We heard earlier one of the panelists talked about this issue of diversity of opinions, of almost a rebelliousness, which is part of what has always fueled the U.S. tech revolution. These, this sort of Steve Jobs think different idea. But we've seen that throughout. Do you think, Wilson, in your experience, the young the entrepreneurs that you deal with, the scientists, the technologists, are you seeing the rebelliousness that comes with new creativity?
Sorry, just like
are you seeing, a rebelliousness? Are you seeing, people challenge orthodoxy, challenge the system, come up with, ideas that seem outrageous?
Yeah, exactly, and I think the actually one of my colleagues also here, and we are, as a global company, sometimes we are, a little bit too slow, too conservative. And really, once we start a new project, we intend to have a case study,
right.
Understand the payback period, and make sure it's a very limited risk.
Right.
Now, actually, the young employees in our companies, and they often challenge us, and also they like to learn from like Xiaomi, and they say we 小步快跑，快步试错，让消费者教你怎么去做。
Ask the consumer to tell us what to do.
Learn the successful Chinese entrepreneurs and young entrepreneurs, and like 大疆, yeah, and it's for us, I think we intend to open for that.
Yeah.
Just tell you, recently we have a length discussion for our strategy for next 5 to 10 years. We intend to understand what is 6 mega trends in China. For example, we're targeting the young people just like you, kids. You know, the myopia growth rate in China is really critical. So even our President Xi Jinping urging all the level of the government, give them a KPI. Each year,
that's because of all the
1% decrease. So now we intend to create kind of the screening system. Rather than when you got myopia, give you 1 pair of glasses, that's firefighting. We intend to have how we can have an effective management system, proactive prevention system, of course, plus precise correction.
Ben,
On Wilson's point as well, I think, again, we're at this precipice where products that are emerging from China, even in the hardware space, are starting to be globally competitive, not only from a price perspective, which they always were, but from a quality perspective. And that's starting to provide a benchmark for other products to emulate, even foreign products. So Xiaomi is a great example of that, a company that is, I think, of any mobile handset company in the world best primed to target that next billion consumers. They're a top 5 mobile retailer in 19 markets around the world, including being #1 in India, a market I think most folks in China thought that China could never be competitive in. And other companies, we invested in a company called NIO, which is an electric car company. If you look at their cars, you go into their dealerships, it looks like a global brand. It doesn't have that kind of local kind of touch and feel. And so this is just at the beginning. DJI, another company, obviously, in this region, this example, but just beginning to see them leading as benchmark products.
So I want to come back to the question that Alan asked earlier, which is, who loses in this, in terms of the current fight over globalization right now, and where do you see this coming out 5 years from now? What, you want to take that one?
There don't have to be losers. The seismic shift that I'm witnessing, which is this pivot where Silicon Valley was always the benchmark in terms of operational excellence and product performance, starting to move that this way, at least in terms of some of the kind of core consumer internet products we look at, like fintech, e-commerce. That pivot is underway. But that's part of a global cycle that goes on, where there was a period of time when America was replicating Chinese models, then China replicated American models, and now we're starting to see it go back the other way. So my friends who run Facebook Messenger will tell you they're very closely trying to emulate what WeChat is doing.
Right.
Even someone like YouTube have introduced things like tipping product generators and kind of user-generated content like we have in China with our live streamers. And so we can continue to learn from each other and build as that pendulum swings from one side to the other in terms of who's innovating.
Right.
Let me change to the Chinese channel. Sorry.
Yeah.
刚才这个
Just now, I have said that looking at film and entertainment industry in the next 5 to 10 years, I believe there will be many changes in this industry. And Hollywood produce many films selling in many markets. China also sell many Hollywood films because China's box office is a great support for Hollywood films. And most of the films, hot-selling films, are superheroes, but the box offices are reducing. So for Hollywood, they will research and create new films that can attract the attention of Chinese audience. But what are the topic, what are the style of those films, we do not know yet. But we are facing a changing time. Superhero films will no longer sell well in China. Looking at China's films globalization, this is a bigger challenge. Up to now, we don't have an international film produced in China. So there are many problems here. First, a country without a solid, comprehensive, trustworthy values cannot travel to other parts of the world because our films are lack of independent values. So it is very difficult for us to produce films with independent values. What is the future of Chinese films? You look at the War Wolves. It sells very well in China, but no box office in foreign markets. What kind of Chinese film can sell well in foreign markets? I don't have answer yet. So many industries of China are developing very fast and is investing in other countries. For cultural industry are often neglected in China, but for cultural industry, normally when we do negotiation with other countries, we are given as gift. For example, if they negotiate, film quotas are given as a gift to other countries. So for cultural globalization, at present we don't see much Chinese film to be sold in other countries.
Yes, raise a hand. I see a hand. No, half a hand over there. What about financing? Are you seeing a rise in people stepping up to actually invest in movies here?
Overseas or in China?
No, here in China. Yeah.
Here in China, both overseas and China is the lowest point.
Right.
For the whole 20 decades, I think.
Wow.
Today on my WeChat, 朋友圈, they're all distributing. People are posting a news about taxation on movie business. It's stupid, actually. For writers, we're going to pay 40% kind of income tax, because the taxation agency saying that writers, the cost of your work is a pen and the paper, right? So in the past, you can, if you register a company in a special cultural zone or somewhere, you can just only pay 6 or 7% of the tax. But now you've got to pay high, 40%, kind of 30% tax, because they think you have no cost. But what's the writer's cost? The living is the cost, right? That's their material. That's their work on the script, on the new ideas based on their life. Their whole living expense are their cost. But the tax agents, they don't see this. So it's the worst point.
Do you see this the sort of fear of globalization reversing as we get, as you do more and more business with overseas, as your products get shared, yes, as you start to develop technologies that everybody wants to use and copy? Yeah. You see this changing?
Yeah, I see it's changing, but I see this positive change. I think Zeiss as the cutting edge technology, innovation is our DNA. Yeah. So if you always have the brand new products, new concepts, it's always welcome globally. Yeah. So if you really consistent on the innovation, you will make a success. Secondly, I think the globalization is just like a circle. Yeah. Probably now we change from globalization 1.0 to on the way to 2.0. Yeah. And most important, the difference between 1.0 and 2.0, I think, is from one direction to two directions. Yeah. So we should have a mutual globalization, open up, and across different regions, different countries. And thirdly, I think for China in the future will definitely play a very important role for the globalization, will be part of the organization. However, it's the challenge to China, as you mentioned, that in China, actually, we have a different level of the economics. You can make a very good things, sometimes also not really qualified. Yeah. I think we are on the way, one way we go to the globalization, the other also nationalism. Is across the different regions, the countries, we should really get it flat rather than a big difference, a big gap. Yeah.
So we're going to leave it on that very optimistic note. I want to thank Wilson and Ben and Ben. Thank you so much.